Welcome to today's edition of Coronavirus Impact, where we look at how the Commonwealth is being affected by the ongoing pandemic. I'm Francine Schertzer. I'm joined today on the phone by Jamie Martinez, reporter with the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review and TribLive.com. Jamie, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
What's the environment been like in Allegheny County over the past week or so?
I think people are doing their best to stick to, self-isolation, or keeping to themselves, practicing social distancing. Businesses are trying to pivot and do what they can to stay afloat. But for the most part, the streets have been quiet, the city's been quiet, and I think people are just trying to do the best they can.
How has the pandemic affected your ability to do your work as a journalist?
It's been interesting. I mean, we've had reporters and, I too have been going out to some press conferences out and about around the city. We have to be out there in order to tell everyone else what's going on. But there has been a pretty quick transition to conducting some of these press conferences and press calls virtually using different programs, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, to be able to interface with officials without actually being in the same room. And, that's been working fairly well, but of course presents some challenges when you're trying to press for answers, ask follow-up questions, and even just get clarifications on some of these terms that can be confusing and, information that's changing quickly.
In addition to the administration's press conferences from both Governor Wolf and the health secretary, what are you hearing from local officials?
Well, they seem to be working closely with state officials as well. We're getting daily updates from the county, and county officials have been very accessible. Allegheny County has a health department, so they've been doing a lot of their own contact tracing and monitoring of the number of cases, working with local hospitals. Our local health systems, Allegheny Health Network and UPMC, have also been holding regular press conferences and keeping us updated on not only their testing, but other research and monitoring that they're conducting. So we are getting a good flow of information from our county health officials, as well as local hospital systems, in addition to the information that's being collected by the state.
You wrote that the state police today would begin enforcement of the governor's call to close all non-life-sustaining businesses. What does that enforcement look like, and what happens to businesses that don't comply?
Sure. We don't have a lot of details on exactly how they're going to be conducting that enforcement. We know that Pittsburgh police will also be taking calls through their 911 system, with regards to any businesses that aren't complying. I think we'll have a better idea by the end of the day today if they have enforcement numbers to share or what some of those cases look like. But it seems like some of that information, local officials are figuring that out as they go. When the order came down from the state, local officials had to sort of work on their own to figure out how they were going to respond to. So we'll be monitoring that throughout the day. And hopefully by the end of the day today, we'll know what some of that enforcement has looked like. The Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board has been doing their own enforcement of restaurants and bars since last week. And it seems like throughout the state, most of those businesses have been complying and doing their best to pivot towards takeout only. So I would say by the end of the day today, we'll have a better sense of who is and who isn't complying.
How are hospitals in Western Pennsylvania dealing with not only their current patient load, but the potential for that to greatly expand as this coronavirus continues to spread throughout the area?
Yeah, so the state and even some federal authorities have been calling on hospitals around the country to limit elective procedures, to really take a close look at what can be delayed and what can be put off. Allegheny Health Network and Excella, which are two health systems out here, they both said last week that they would be postponing elective procedures. UPMC was steadfast in their commitment to continue with business as usual, but they did say yesterday that they would be postponing procedures at their ambulatory centers, so outpatient facilities. So we are seeing now all of the health systems taking steps to limit the procedures that are taking place and focusing on making sure that they're saving resources for a potential increase in people who need to come into the hospital with COVID-19.
Are you seeing tangible signs that the availability of tests are being more available now?
Well, we're seeing testing numbers go up. So if, the testing numbers are going up, that does tell us that more tests are being performed. UPMC has said that they are increasing the number of tests that they're able to do this week. So the turnaround seems to be a little bit faster. The number of tests that are out there are, growing, and we're seeing that reflected in the testing numbers that we're getting from the state and from the county.
You wrote that Carnegie Mellon University is working to forecast the spread of the coronavirus over the summer. Do you have any insight in when those results and predictions might be available to the general public?
We don't. The last we heard is that they were using, they do regular flu forecasting. That's something that center at CMU does every year and has become well known for doing. So they were changing over their operations to also do the same forecasting for COVID-19. I think the last time we checked in with them, it was uncertain how much information they were going to be able to glean, based on how much data they have. We really only have one season of COVID-19 to work off of. So I think they'll be doing their best, but we haven't received any updates from them in the last week or so.
How have universities in Western Pennsylvania responded to the outbreak?
Well, everyone moved to online instruction. Pitt just on Friday closed their campus. You need special permission to be in many, if not all, of their buildings. I believe CMU and Duquesne and others have taken similar steps, but they've essentially closed down the same way many other businesses and institutions around the city and around the county have closed down. Students are working remotely. TAs are holding office hours remotely. I think everyone is just keeping with the social distancing. And campus Oakland is quiet. Fifth Avenue has never been so quiet in the middle of a weekday.
What's the latest you're hearing regarding lawmakers' efforts to extend the date of Pennsylvania's primary election to sometime in June?
We've heard that that's definitely a possibility, but haven't received anything definite yet. So that's something that we're monitoring as well.
What have the concerns been of local election officials regarding this?
Well, we've postponed here in Allegheny County training for our new election system poll workers. We're supposed to be going for, they were holding trainings on an almost daily basis. Our Board of Elections was doing a pretty good job with making sure the rollout with our new voting system would be smooth for the primary. All of that has been put on hold, and we're waiting on updates for how they're going to proceed with, that rollout as well.
How is Allegheny County kind of in general being impacted from an economic standpoint as a result of the last week or two?
Well, we've seen some estimates that the region could lose, as many as 500,000 jobs could be impacted. Some economists are saying that we could see anything from a short dip to a full-on recession. I think there's just not a lot of information out there right now to make these predictions off of. So, the predictions range pretty widely, but, 500,000 jobs represents nearly half of the workers in the Pittsburgh region. It's a 7-county region here in southwestern Pennsylvania. So, hopefully the impact is not that severe. But again, the economists are giving us a range of predictions, so it's really hard to say.
There have been some municipalities that were already financially distressed prior to this outbreak over the last few weeks. What kind of things are those municipalities looking for to get them back on their feet once this outbreak passes?
I mean, just a little while ago, Pittsburgh Mayor Bill Peduto put out a statement calling on state lawmakers and federal lawmakers to think about municipalities. They're looking for aid. They're going to need some help to get through this, especially since local municipalities, whether it's the small city or borough level or even on the county level, are the ones really on the front lines of supporting residents right now and keeping operations going. So they're definitely looking for support, and we'll be watching to see what our state lawmakers are able to pull through as well. There's been money made available for local businesses, so there are a number of grants available for local businesses to apply for to get through this time, grants, low interest loans. But everyone is likely going to need some support to get through this.
Jamie Martinez is with the Pittsburgh Tribune-Review. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be back right after this short break.
The eyes of the nation are on Pennsylvania as a key influencer to the 2020 election. PCN has over 25 years of trusted state government coverage. Our network is your platform to connect directly with Pennsylvania voters. Whether it's a presidential race, statewide campaign, or local cause, our viewers are ready to hear from you. Book your ad now. PCN, your access to Pennsylvania voters.
Hear stories from Pennsylvanians who served our country with Voices of Veterans on PCN. In a series of interviews, service members offer a rare glimpse into the stories that only they can tell. Watch episodes on demand with the PCN Select streaming service. To nominate someone for Voices of Veterans or to share your story with PCN, go to PCNTV.com. PCN, proud to bring Pennsylvania history and culture to you.
Welcome back. We are now joined on the phone by Chuck Moran, Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Licensed Beverage and Tavern Association. Chuck, thank you for joining us today.
Francine, thanks for having us on today.
How is your association members being impacted by the governor's call to close all non-life-sustaining businesses?
Well, certainly our members, and just to explain, I represent the very smallest of the smallest players. I mean, they're small business, often referred to as mom and pop operations, and you know, they're in this crisis. They're really the tip of the spear. They're the first ones to start closing down or limiting services. They are definitely being impacted. Some of them over the weekend that I talked to, they were not sure if they could continue to operate just takeout food because it's you know, all you have to do is walk into any grocery store these days, and a lot of people are eating in versus going out for food. But they're going to struggle, particularly without any help from the state or the federal government.
How are your members responding to the governor's order?
Well, you know, the good news that we got yesterday from the governor's office is that of all the checks, the overwhelming majority of them seem to be in compliance. We started getting concerned, you know, a few days before the announcement. So for our members, we started prepping them with some news and some tips and so forth. Some of them, you know, started ordering ahead things like to-go boxes, to-go cups, you know, additional supplies and so forth. So we did have a number who were ready to go, and even though it wasn't an order that they liked, they complied.
The governor said that state police were going to begin to enforce his order today. What does enforcement look like?
Well, that's actually been happening for some time with the taverns and restaurants and pubs and so forth. There have been checks by what we call the LCE, the Liquor Control Enforcement. That's a division of the state police that works with the PLCB. So the ones that I've talked to that are offering you know, takeout food, they said they have been around and have checked to make sure that people aren't congregating, that they're coming in, picking up their food and leaving. And now in Philadelphia, I'm sure you guys have heard the news that, you know, it's really, there's no walk-in ordering. So it's just, you know, order via phone, come and get it or have it delivered.
What penalties do members face if they fail to comply?
You know, those haven't really been announced specifically, but, you know, there have been statements that would lead us to believe that if you don't comply, you know, there could be some issues when your license is up for renewal.
What kind of resources are available to members that have been forced to close their doors?
Well, we've been communicating directly with our members through our email alert system. For now, all that is really developing. We've supplied them information on anything from unemployment compensation for their employees to, hey, what happens if somebody walks into your place and is later diagnosed? You know, what type of cleaning supplies do you need? What might you have to go through? We've supplied information on what you can do to provide safety to your takeout staff and as well as the customers who are coming to pick up.
What kind of additional assistance or support would you like to see both state and federal government provide once this pandemic does pass?
Well, hopefully, you know, hopefully what we also need to think about is as the numbers start to improve, what type of plan will the state put in place to allow a return to work? You know, I know it's too early to be talking about this now, but, you know, whether it's next week, the week after, who knows? But is there going to be a gradual return will people start being allowed to use their patios under certain conditions? When will it be appropriate to open up the doors and let some people sit down? The sooner we can get to that point, the sooner, your servers, your bartenders, your musicians, they'll all get hired back and be back working again. So we're trying to think down the road, but it is down the road for now. It's what can we do to keep everybody safe?
Chuck Moran is the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Licensed Beverage and Tavern Association. Thank you for talking with us today.
Thank you, Francine.
We will be back right after this short break.
Your hometown is awesome. You know it and want to show it off. Show your hometown to the state with PCN's Hometown Postcards. Upload video showcasing interesting features, historic places, or just how beautiful the area is. Go to PCNTV.com, click on Hometown Postcards, and follow the upload instructions. PCN, proud to bring Pennsylvania to you.
For over 35 years, the Emmy Award-winning Weather World has provided in-depth statewide forecasts that you won't find anywhere else. Weather World gives you more than just tomorrow's weather. They offer long-range forecasts and unique content that answers the why, as well as the what, when, and how weather will affect your life. Weather World, from the Penn State Department of Meteorology and Atmospheric Science. Weekdays at 5:45 and available for free on the PCN app.
We're now joined on the phone by David Taylor, President and CEO of the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. David, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Francine.
Tell us about how your members have been impacted by the governor's call to close all non-life-sustaining businesses.
Well, we wish that the governor had reached out to the stakeholders before making this unilateral announcement on Thursday. Obviously, the governor's order was imprecise, and that's why it's necessary to continue to revise it. The fact is, we need our manufacturing sector to respond to the pandemic, and that we need all of our manufacturing capacity to focus on this. And so we need not just the manufacturers in these essential areas. We need all of their suppliers, all of their distributors, all of their vendors. We need the whole supply chain in order for these manufacturers to be able to do those tasks which are recognized as being essential.
As you mentioned, you want your members to be able to fulfill the needs during the current pandemic. Are there circumstances where perhaps some of the manufacturers have been able to retrofit what they typically produce to provide needed supplies?
Yes, absolutely. This is, for American manufacturing, this is our Apollo 13 moment. And you see, like, for example, the Eight Oaks Distillery in the Lehigh Valley, that they have retooled and that they are now making hand sanitizer. The entire manufacturing sector across America is working on this, and under the leadership of the National Association of Manufacturers, they have launched the Creators Respond movement, and that there is all of the resources are available through PMA's website, pamanufacturers.org/COVID-19. There's a link there to the Creators Respond survey that NAM has put together so that manufacturers can list their resources, their capacities, and that this information will go directly to the White House Pandemic Task Force so that they can map who's available to do what to meet needs. But yes, there are manufacturers all across Pennsylvania who are retooling right now to help provide the supplies that our healthcare providers need to fight the pandemic.
Are you satisfied with revisions to the list of which businesses are permitted to operate at this time?
No. So the way that it works is you have the governor's list. If your business is deemed essential, you're in the clear. The governor has also designated the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, which is part of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, the CISA list, that if your company is on that list, that the governor and his office will recognize your function as being essential. We also need a blanket waiver for all of the supply chains serving all of those businesses, because this is what is so deeply frustrating. If you are a manufacturer whose work has been deemed essential, but your vendors, your suppliers, your logistics network has not been deemed essential, then you are in a sense, thwarted and unable to do the good that you could be doing at this time. We need the governor to clarify that supply chains and distribution networks are all deemed essential. Actually, what would be best would be just a blanket declaration that all manufacturing is essential.
How responsive has the administration been to considering waivers?
Well, I mean, they're doing the best that they can. I'm told that the office has been swamped with 10,000 that are waiting to be replied to. I've heard that that there's a problem with consistency, but essentially, I mean, what I would tell manufacturers, businesses is, if you and your counsel believe that you are covered by either the governor's list, the CISA list, or that you're part of the supply chain for one of those businesses, consider yourselves covered and do not ask for a waiver. The only people who need specific waivers would be people whose businesses are not on either of those lists.
What do you see as the long-term impact of the governor's order?
Well, I mean, history will judge, and right now the focus needs to be on addressing this crisis, which is upon us. We need, basically, I think that the lesson that we all need to learn from what has happened here is you need input from all the stakeholders. Our leaders should never presume that they already know everything that they need to know.
What resources are available for manufacturers that were forced to halt their operations?
Well, I mean, that is what is pending. There's massive federal legislation, which unfortunately has been hung up at this point to provide relief to our employers. I know that the federal response is going to include pouring an awful lot of the federal taxpayer dollars into the state unemployment compensation and workers' compensation funds. But, again, a lot of that is pending. We just need to get through these days of fighting the pandemic as it crests and keeping that crest below the capacity of our healthcare system to respond to it.
And finally, what would you like to see come from either state or federal government to help manufacturers recover once this pandemic comes to a close?
Well, we need to survive it. I mean, we need to survive it, which means that even as we are cutting off all of those kinds of activities where people are going to be in contact with one another, all of those, point of sale, commercial kinds of things, and people, going out on social things, we need the government to allow as much of the productive economy to continue to function behind the scenes as possible. You can't get paid leave from a business that's gone under.
David Taylor is President and CEO of the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Francine.
That's it for today's show. Coronavirus Impact airs on weekdays at noon and 8 p.m. It's also available on PCN's Facebook, YouTube channel, and on our website, pcntv.com. I'm Francine Schertzer. Thank you for watching.